Okay, we have another question lined up here. What is the temperature of the room around potential solutions to anti-competitive market entry practices such as pay for delay, patent thickening, et cetera, under a Biden administration?
Hmm. Maybe we can get a little clarification on what they mean by the temperature in the room.
Political temperature?
Not sure.
I'm looking for a text and not seeing one for clarification.
Well, why don't we assume they're talking about the political temperature?
Yeah. I am certain that the Biden administration, let's say an FDA and a Biden administration, is certainly going to be very friendly to generic competition and bringing in as many low cost candidate drugs as possible, and would probably want to come down very hard on pay for delay and those kinds of, evergreening of patents and those kind of shenanigans that would delay generic entry. But on the other hand, I also think that they will be have more of a regulatory bent. So they're going to be hopefully scrutinizing these manufacturing plants more rigorously. I mean, we know that under the Trump administration, enforcement by the FDA has gone way down.
In what ways? In the US as well as in overseas?
Just across the board. I mean, basically the FDA, any manufacturing plant making drugs for the US market has to be inspected, or that was the regulation before COVID, had to be inspected by the FDA. And, the consequences of those inspections have been really diminished under the Trump administration. Fewer sanctions of plants, fewer punishments, fewer warning letters, those kinds of things.
Which suggests that if not the inspectors, then at the higher bureaucratic levels in the FDA, they're just not, which you wrote about in your book.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that seems to have increased.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We have any chat?
We are at the end of our question queue. The clarification, by the way, was about congressional and HHS and FDA appointment temperature.
Mm-hmm. I think we addressed that.
It does strike me, and again, this is totally, I'm not doing about Washington, or incredibly knowledgeable about Washington or anything else, that coming out of this, for the drug companies overall, this is going to be seen as a real PR or even political plus for the drug companies, because they have, it appears, very quickly, given how long it has been able to come up what we hope will be 1 or 2 or 3 vaccines and also some treatments. And that is, I mean, they've been able to do that. And that, again, we have to make sure these things work. So I'm wondering to what extent there's going to be a political appetite for going after drug companies.
Well, look, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So I think we have to really wait and see. I mean, I think it was an H1N1 vaccine that proved to lead to really devastating symptoms of Guillain-Barré syndrome. So there's a lot that can go wrong with these vaccines, both in a public health way, and also there's a lot of questions about equitable distribution and payment, So I think these drug companies understand that this could go south on them very quickly. I mean, they're really in a minefield when it comes to public opinion.
Yeah. And it's interesting that in the case of Pfizer and others, they basically got all prepared to manufacture the drug before they even knew if it was going to work or not.
So that is the result of Operation Warp Speed, because what Operation Warp Speed did was sink money into these candidates and say,
Yeah.
you're going to do all this stuff in parallel. You're not going to wait for approval. You're going to make the doses in advance.
Nah.
And they're going to sit in the warehouse. And if you don't get approval, we're going to destroy.
So they've actually made some of these drugs
They've
and they're
made the
sitting in
drugs.
warehouses. Oh.
They've made the drugs and we still don't know where they've been made, whether those plants have been inspected. Many of the drugs are made. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The ones that don't get approval will be destroyed. Now, will there be a gray market for those? Are they going to get destroyed or, you know, smuggled out the back door? We don't know.
That's great.
Yeah.
We have another question about China.
Mm-hmm.
Could Chinese abilities with CRISPR technology have played a role in inventing a virus? Is that even possible?
I don't know enough. I don't know enough about CRISPR to say that. I mean, and I'm not aware, you know, on the one hand, I'm not aware of any evidence that China did invent this in any way. On the other hand, you know, there has been a tremendous lack of transparency from China about the origin of the virus. So there's been a lot of restrictions around teams that have wanted to come in from the World Health Organization and inspect. You know, I would imagine these are big questions that hopefully will, you know, answers will emerge in the coming year. You know, that we really still don't know enough about the origin of COVID-19.
That is the end of our question queue at the moment. If anyone else, oh, hang on, we just got one.
Huh?
Separate from COVID-19 vaccines, how will the general policy of drug importation from, for example, Canada or other foreign markets create risks in the US drug supply chain? What can be done to reduce this?
Oh, there are real risks to this. So, you know, the idea of importation or reimportation is the idea that's introduced every time we sort of hit the wall from our failure to regulate drug prices in the US. You know, our drug prices are so high, politicians can't solve that because they refuse to regulate drug prices. So what they suggest instead is importation from Canada. And the whole idea in the American psyche is that those Canadian drugs that come from nice, clean Canada and surrounded by snow and all of that, and it's all good and safe. But in fact, we really don't know where so-called Canadian drugs are coming from. Do they originate in Canada? Are they, you know, from Canada by way of Pakistan? And in fact, a lot of those Canadian pharmacies have fine print that say, you know, if we don't have the drug in stock, you authorize us to obtain it from our offshore partners, which is, yeah, you don't really want to have a drug from any offshore partner of anybody's. So there is, I think, a lot of risk in reimportation. And in fact, Florida recently, they basically, you know, through the Trump administration, opened up this platform for, you know, importation partners, people to import drugs, and didn't get any takers. So I don't think it's as feasible as people think. I don't think it's safe, personally.
Okay, we have a couple more questions lined up here. Who would you suggest that the listener read from, follow on Twitter to follow the policy and regulatory sides of pharma?
Well, you know, there's a whole website publication that's really doing the most detailed pharma reporting, which is called STAT. Are you familiar with STAT? So they're doing, you know, they're really like on the front lines of pharma reporting. So I'd certainly follow them and like sign up for any of their newsletters, which are pretty informative.
I just want to say, having sitting on some award juries, their stories they do some really fine work.
Yeah, they do. They're very good. Yeah.